looks like a very, very serious dog, German Shepherd. And Diesel, so he's like my good friend, he's my producer, and he's like, you're the real deal. You're the guy who actually goes in and makes these businesses work. That's how Jimmy describes it. But yeah, I seek freedom. So my 1% is, freedom.
I agree. I think that's why we all get into doing. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 1% podcast. I'm your host, Vin.
And I'm Shane.
And today we have a very special guest for you. We have a good friend of mine, or who will be becoming a better one after we go and have lunch, of course, is my good man, Jonathan, over here. So Jonathan is an expert in the world of EOS. For those of you that do not know, it is Entrepreneur Operating System. It is one of the best systems for companies that are looking to scale and grow. He's also a right-hand man to Chris Voss. Those of you who do not know who he is, he's a world-class negotiator with a phenomenal story, which you should check out. And today, Jonathan is going to share his expertise. He's going to talk about what it means to be a 1%er to him. And we're also going to ask him about his t-shirt. John, welcome to the show. Welcome to the 1% podcast.
Thanks, Vin. Thanks, Shane. Glad to be here.
So, John, you were mentioning before that this very interesting shirt, for those of you that are not watching this but listening in on audio, John has this German Shepherd. It looks like he's wearing goggles, a mask. It's this hardcore looking dog. And John, what'd you say was the name?
Fur Missile.
Fur Missile. So John's got this branded shirt of a German Shepherd. John, why don't you share a quick little story with us about that? We're super interested.
Sure. My friends Billy and Jayla have a dog. His name is Diesel. Diesel looks like a very, very serious dog, German Shepherd. And Diesel is afraid of me. So he thinks I'm the trainer. So I'm like not only the EOS trainer, but I'm Diesel's trainer. So when I show up, Diesel come running at me when he doesn't know it's me, behind the fence, barking as if he's protecting the Pentagon. As soon as he sees it's me, turns around and runs back to his mom. And so he's just funny because we call him the Fur Missile. And then I went and bought this shirt, the Fur Missile shirt, and got one for Billy, and I happen to be wearing it today. So
I love it. And we've all had some interesting experiences. Shane has a very cowardly dog, which he'll tell you about. I used to have this 10-pound Maltese who would bark at everything and everyone, and then as soon as you got close to it, she would run, put her tail between her legs, and hide behind you. So, Shane, how about your dog? What's your cowardly dog do?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I feel like I need John to come to my house and be the dog whisperer to my dog. I also feel that it's also too late because my dog is 12 years old. My dog's a border collie, very smart dog, loves herding us, on walks, very smart, but the biggest coward you'd ever meet. Dogs, cats, people, whatever it may be, if you come near it, he's going the other direction. So maybe he sees everybody as, Jonathan's as trainers, as dog whisperers. But I feel like as soon as we picked him up from the pound when he was 2 months old, he's just always been that way. And it's almost to the extreme point. My brother-in-law came in and he was watching the house. And this is day one. My brother-in-law lives pretty close by. And this was a couple, must be over 10 years ago now. But as soon as he came in, and remember, my dog's name is Dude. Dude's seen him 100 times. He comes in, and as soon as it happens, Dude's barking. My dog's barking at him. And he goes over, and he's like, Dude, it's just me. It's Nathan. And he pees and runs all over the house. And I'm like, great. So now my brother-in-law has to clean it because he's house watching. And things haven't changed for the past 12 years. So we keep a nice Swiffer cleaner-upper close by, as unfortunately we use it quite frequently.
I love it. I mean, nothing says get out of my house like piss everywhere, right? What a protector.
Thankfully, we clean it up right away so it doesn't smell, but yes.
I love it, man. Different dogs, different personalities, but all things stand true. No matter how you slice it, they're all our friends. Well,
I need a Fur Missile in my house next time.
Yeah, we're gonna all go purchase a Fur Missile, train him. John's gonna be leading the pack of our dogs. It's gonna be great. John's gonna be walking with a herd of vicious German Shepherds behind him.
All behind me. They don't walk in front. That's the rule.
Damn right. I love it. Well, this is a great segue. Let's lead into John has extensive training as a leadership. I was really excited to meet him and bring him on the show because of the fact that he's he's not somebody you might see outward, right? John, you don't have this ginormous brand, but you are somebody who is probably just as high up as anybody who could be seen visibly in the news or the media. Is that fair to say?
I'm glad you feel that way.
Well, I love what you do because here's the thing. I know a lot of people who use EOS. I know that there are so many people that have scaled their business, built their businesses, have implemented it, have loved it. You're one of the top tier people in EOS. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? And for those that are listening that might not know, can you give a big overview and then just how much you're doing in there?
Sure. So EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, it's based on a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. My brother Tyler and I were actually Gino's second client. So I met Gino before the book. So there's now 150,000 companies that have run on EOS. My former client and business partner, Mark O'Donnell, happens to be the CEO of EOS today. Sometimes I joke that I'm the shadow visionary at EOS. I talk to Mark like every morning. But EOS is a operating system designed to help you run your entrepreneurial business. So one of the best ways to understand operating system, it was before like Apple had iOS or Mac had Mac OS. And the reality is EOS is a strategy execution system. So you come up with a strategy. A lot of people have ideas, but we're the people who actually go make those ideas happen and then get people to ask the really hard questions. I was actually in a meeting earlier today and someone was crying. You would think someone crying in the meeting means we actually did something wrong. It actually meant we had a breakthrough. So EOS does three things. We say vision, where you're going 5 to 10 years from now, traction, what do we have to do in the next 90 days, and healthy, having absolute organizational clarity about who does what, and then having the really difficult conversation. So Vin, with your background, you know about the difficult conversations.
Yeah, it's interesting because why I love what you do too is because it's so complementary to what I do. If not complete hand holding, it is extremely complementary because you can't just work on a business without working on the people. The people are the cogs that make the wheels move. And so many times people want to put in a system or a process or whatever the case, and they forget you also have to keep investing in your people. And I think EOS marries those two so well because from what I understand about it, there is that helping people work on themselves, helping them achieve their goals to fit into the greater sum of the company. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there is a people component in EOS. So we say all great organizations are made up of great people. We have to have the right people in the right seats. And so I'm an EOS implementer, which means I am a teacher, a coach, and a facilitator of EOS. And I like to say I'm also another entrepreneur in the room. Not everyone is that, but that's my thing. But the reality is if I need to do one-on-one coaching, I call Vin. I actually don't do one-on-one coaching with the team because I can't both serve the team well and serve individuals on the team. So that's where there's a great complement.
That's a great distinction. I want to bring that up as a point, nail that in a little bit, because a lot of the times entrepreneurs, business owners, they will hire a company coach to do one thing, and then they'll also try to hire them to do the one-to-ones, and it could be good, but there could be a little bit of friction, I want to say. It's hard to feel fully comfortable to share and open up to the same person that is putting the needs of the company first. And it's not to say that it's about disregarding the people, but it's also looking at that there are two different ways to show up to serve people. And even if you can separate that effectively, because I think a lot of good coaches and facilitators and leaders could do that, it still might be hard for the person in the seat receiving the service to be able to understand that as well. So I love what you said. I think it's so important for people to understand that.
I feel like I've been living under a rock here. I feel like I have a great sized company. I have over 400 employees and the same amount of clients. And I've never heard of EOS. And I feel like I'm kind of mind boggled a little bit of why I haven't heard of something like this. It doesn't sound like a CRM database. It doesn't sound like a point of sale system. I feel like I'm just, using the abbreviations of POS and EOS and LOS. So EOS is a visionary board. Am I understanding that right? I feel like I'm trying to follow along here, but can we put this in more in layman terms here? I guess I've never heard of this.
So we have a specific process that we walk entrepreneurial teams through. We call that a proven process over a period of about 2 years. We have 20 tools in a toolbox that we walk those teams through. And our goal is to get those teams, we say there's 136 issues, Shane, in your business. There might be more because you got more people. But the joke is there's 136 issues in the business. And they all boil down to one of 6 key components. So those components are vision, where are we going 5 to 10 years from now? People, do we have the right people in the right seats? Data, are we measuring the right data, and are we working against it? Issues, to the extent you can solve the issues, you can get to your vision faster. Process, that's documented, and then to get everyone to follow the same process. So that's how I got Diesel. He follows the process, sits well. And then the last piece is traction. So when we start with a client, we typically say they're about 40% strong in those 6 key components. We have a organizational checkup that we can ask people to take, and they self-assess. And the goal is to get those teams to 80+% of those 6 key components.
So would you say your main demographic is people about to exit their business, people in the start of their business, or 3 to 10 years, I would say, right in the middle, right in the sweet spot? They've already gotten things established, a good clientele list, because it sounds like you help a little bit of everything, but I'd personally want to use you to prep to sell.
Okay, John, I brought you here to get a client today, just to let you know.
It sounds like I'm already sliding in your DMs, John, and like we're going to set up a one-to-one. Even though you don't do one-to-ones, I'm paying, and I'm going to get a shirt as well. So I think
I'll send you the shirt. Just give me the address after the show, okay? So the issue, here's the deal. I've done 40 exits with my clients. So yes, there is a group of my clients who do that. So I worked on Wall Street. I have a master's degree in accounting. Like, I've been through that. EOS is really for scale up. So we would call it our target market. So our target market is not startups. So if you're going to do startup, I'm like, use the business model canvas and lean startup. We're looking for companies that are basically EBITDA positive, or they're profitable. And I'll tell you what we originally had. It was 2 to 50 million in revenue, 10 to 250 employees, growth oriented, open-minded, willing to learn, frustrated, want help, appreciative, and respectful, and generally privately held. So that's what our target market was. Okay, so that's the 1%. And I have worked with clients as large as 5 billion with 2,000 employees. I've worked with JLo Beauty, which was an interesting engagement. And I was with the Spy Museum. You guys were teasing me. I was with the president in DC, and I was actually at the Spy Museum on the Spycast yesterday.
See, I wasn't teasing you. I know what you do.
All right, I need bigger friends. That's awesome.
Yeah, you guys should talk after this. You guys go hug it out, have a conversation, whisper in each
Well, I
other's
just
ears.
didn't know it actually exists. I feel like it's business coaching on steroids. It's not one-on-one. It's more of a business analyst finding out what exactly is going wrong with the business, and obviously with different layers as far as your vision, where you want to be, your people, who do you have as directors overseeing it, and probably 163 others. But I feel like every successful business owner that is either bottlenecked, want to grow, or want to sell, you're the guy. I mean, yeah, you definitely made another client here. It's just whatever
it's good
it is.
to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Shane, Jimmy, who was a producer of The Prophet, the TV show, the TV
Mhm.
show, he's my
Right.
producer in the city. So he's like my good friend. He's my producer, and he's like, "You're the real deal. You're the guy who actually goes in and makes these businesses work." That's how Jimmy describes it.
Wow. Well, I'm sold. Can we end the podcast? Because I
No,
want to
no,
go
no. We
right
still
now
have
with my
more. Hold
John.
on. All right. Listen. First, we got a few things to still go through. John has so much more cool stuff he has to talk about. And one of them being that John works very closely with Chris Voss. Shane, maybe you don't know who Chris Voss is either. I don't know how big of a rock this is.
I've heard of Chris Voss. I wouldn't say I know his resume though.
John, can you share a little bit about the awesome things that you do with Chris Voss? Maybe give a little resume for Shane and the listeners out there that don't know enough about him.
Sure. So Chris Voss is the former lead hostage negotiator for the FBI. He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. That book has sold almost 5 million copies at this point. He is the he's the negotiator on Masterclass. So if you happen to be on Delta and look at your TV in front of you, he is on Masterclass and has done an amazing job there. So we use what we call tactical empathy. So tactical empathy is basically Chris took the hostage negotiation techniques and then made them accessible to the rest of the world. And so we call that tactical empathy. I'm actually writing a book with Derek Gaunt, who's the head coach at the Black Swan Group. That's our team of negotiators. And it'll be the working title is The Missing Manual for Never Split the Difference. So we hope that book sells 1 for 1. It's designed for folks on your team who want to learn how to use these skills.
So, John, what would you say has been maybe one of the most interesting experiences that you've had in the field? Could be in EOS, could be with Chris Voss. Like, what's one of the biggest things that you've done that you feel has personally enlightened you in a way, whether it's life or business revelations?
That's a pretty broad question.
I know. I want to see if there's something. See, and I have a little bit of tact as well. Maybe not the split the difference tact, but my tact is I do sometimes ask broad questions because sometimes there's a glimmer of emotion that pops up for people. And though it might be broad, the thing that sticks out the most to them, and then that's where we get the best story because it hit on an emotional chord. I don't know if that happened for you right now, but I'm curious.
I was just delaying and trying to think, right? I'm kidding with you. So,
ladies and gentlemen, a man not emotionally attached to his work.
That's my move too. I like it.
No, so I have this thing where I just believe in the possible, and I never know what's going to happen. But I believe whatever we want to go happen is possible, and it's usually not like. I went to DC. I was on the Spycast. Well, I went to DC 2 weeks ago. I got myself on the Spycast. Typically, the folks are from the intelligence community on the Spycast. The historian came over. We had a conversation. I came up with this concept of how being a case officer and an entrepreneur are similar. And 2 weeks later, I took a train and I'm on the Spycast, which I never thought would have happened. But if you're not out in the world, just sort of considering the possible, you're not going to get that by sitting in your office looking at a screen.
We actually talk about that a lot, is getting out of your comfort zone, as far as meeting other people, and especially in today's society where, especially during COVID, where businesses have kind of been revamped and rethought of by doing things virtual as far as meetings are concerned. So we talk about how going to dinners, going to meetings, going to conventions, just shaking hands and getting out there and getting out of your comfort zone, your safe space of your home, is so crucial. I mean, you wouldn't have had that opportunity if you didn't.
Yeah, I didn't walk in with any thought that was going to happen. We're having a conversation about something completely different. And then the opportunity presented itself, and I was like, let me sleep on it. And the next day I just said, okay, let's, I put some talking points together and we built a podcast around the talking points. And now I'm friends with with Andrew, who's a historian at the Spy Museum, and like I say, friends for life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
John, what would you say? And I think this is something that I often look at, but I feel like I'm hearing this without hearing it, is what would you say your view is on when you're connecting with people, when you're building relationships? I'm always under the assumption that it's important to provide value in a very genuine way. Don't look to provide value so you could get something back. Look to provide value because that's a part of your personality. What do you feel has been something that's been helpful for you in making these connections and growing? Because some of our listeners are also entrepreneurs and they're people that want to grow, build their networks, expand their business, and they might be a little stuck. What advice might you give to that person?
So help first is one of the EOS core values. So help first means we're going to give before we expect to get anything in return. So I truly believe in the abundance mindset. I got to be friends with Chris Voss, not because I asked, but because I gave. Chris is like, who's this guy who just keeps helping? So the story goes, I meet Chris Voss there's a business club in DC called the Tower Club. I met Chris at the Tower Club. I happened to have relationships in Abu Dhabi at the time. Chris was negotiating something in Abu Dhabi. I had no idea he was the FBI hostage negotiator. So I'm helping Chris negotiate a deal before I even knew he was a negotiator. So, and then the story, sort of the follow on to the story is Chris gets me into the FBI Citizens Academy in New York City. My name is Jonathan Smith. Guess how many Jonathan Smiths there are in the world? So the FBI does my background check and says, you don't qualify, you have a criminal background. So then I use the hostage negotiation techniques against the FBI to get them to rerun my background, and they realize they mistyped my DOB, date of birth. So I get an apology from the FBI, and I say, Chris, it's come full circle. I've used the skills against the FBI, and I got myself into the Citizens Academy. He got me in, really, but I was not going to make it because of someone else's criminal history.
I feel like you should have to, that should be a new qualifier. You have to out negotiate the FBI to get into the negotiation academy.
I'm not going to lie. If I saw a letter from the FBI apologizing, that would be framed in my living room on display in front of everybody saying, here's a public apology from the FBI. That's so awesome.
Yeah, and then we went, and Chris came and did like a fireside chat with one of my clients. So Chris calls me in the morning at 10 o'clock. He's like, hey, can Mike come? So we're going to Zero Bond. I don't know if you know that place, Vin. It's like fancy club in the city. I'm hosting Chris and 20 clients. He's like, can Mike come? I'm like, yeah, sure, Chris, whoever you want to come. Who's Mike? So Mike Driscoll is he was the head of the New York field office for the FBI. So I'm in the Citizens Academy. I'm supposed to go that night to the Citizens Academy. I'm not going because I have my event, which I had organized prior to getting into the academy. Mike's there. I'm like, hey, Mike, Evelyn's going to be upset I'm not at class tonight. He goes, you need evidence? So I have a picture of him and Voss and me that I sent to Evelyn. It's like a hall pass.
Sorry, I was busy hanging out with the head of the FBI, so I couldn't make it to the academy.
Somehow that's like that's sort of like I said, the possibilities. I didn't know that Mike was going to come. I never knew that was going to happen. I just had an event, and Chris is like, "Can Mike come?" So,
feel free to decline to answer if this is a personal question. I'm going to keep it mostly broad. My curiosity is, do you believe in, some people might call it power of the universe, synchronicities, being open to what life has to offer? I don't think that has any one true religious belief. I think that's more of a spiritual concept. Do you have any type of belief like that? Because it sounds, in the way you talk, I feel like there's a lot of that comes out. But I'm curious if you have a belief system or you're just like, hey, that's life.
No, I believe in this. They wrote The Secret, right? I think literally things happen for a reason that I don't know why, and I'm not in control.
Mm.
But if I put myself out there, amazing things happen, and I need to surround myself with amazing people and friends, and just pay it forward. My thing is oftentimes just pay it forward.
Yeah, I love that. So for the listeners who might be wondering how I met John, is actually an interesting chain of events. And John, I don't even know if you know the full chain of events that occurred. So I met this guy at a dinner that I wasn't going to go to. And I met him at this dinner hosted by David Meltzer. And I wasn't going to go because it's just, there were some things that weren't lining up. And then all of a sudden everything did kind of line up. And I was like, cool. So last minute, like almost day of, I was like, hey, I'll go over to this dinner. And I was looking for some people I knew, because that's usually what I do when I go out, which probably, John, you could probably say that's the worst thing to do if you're trying to network. And I didn't really see anybody. And I was like, all right, well, I guess we'll just see. And then all of a sudden, one friend that I knew walked in. I was like, oh, and I clung to him. That's what I like. I like to just hang with my friend. And then he winds up choosing this random spot to sit. And some random good looking guy sits across from us. His name is Joe. And I'm asking him, I'm like, hey, Joe, what are you up to? He's like, oh, this is what I do in life. He does all types of finances and he helps people get funding and all this. I was like, oh, that's really cool, man. And then we leave the dinner. Don't really talk to Joe for a little bit. Hit him up maybe 2 weeks later. I'm like, Joe, we didn't get to connect really. I'd love to learn more about you. And then we're just talking about what we're doing in life. And he goes, I have this friend. He's like, you should meet this guy. I think you guys could really sync up. Maybe you guys could do some business together, or if nothing else, you could get a really good relationship. And I was like, sure, I'm always open to meeting new people. And so made that introduction. And now here we are all hanging out on this podcast, talking about life, business, and connecting. And I think that that is one of the best ways, to your point, to be open to life, and things that you might not really expect could just happen in some really unexpected and great ways.
The universe at work.
Yeah.
Putting yourself out there.
Yeah. And also, I think it's this too, is being intentional. John, sorry. See, now I'm thinking of somebody else. John, would you say that intentionality plays a massive part in everything that you do in your work, in your life? Like, how do you view intentionality? How should people utilize it?
I would say that I have a plan and I'm pretty clear. So I call it structured flexibility. Like I put a plan together, but I'm okay if it doesn't go according to the plan. And I live my life in a way that I wrote this down where I want to run a company of one. There's a book called Company of One. So the idea is I don't have 400 people, Shane. Company of One basically says I run a $10 million business. That's not $10 million, but I run a business as if it's $10 million and then get to live the life I want. So, and it just works. And I'm super intentional. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's going to now require me to, I never wanted to make sure people showed up at the office at 9:00 and gave them a demerit at 9:05. Like I was at JP Morgan doing that. So
Shane showing off his written quote.
Well, time is the most valuable commodity that we have in this life. And that's exactly how I run my day to day is I have my 10 directors and my CIO, and I'm in my business 4 hours a week. It doesn't mean that I don't have goals and growth plans and things like that, but everything that you speak has exactly how I've been wanting to run my company and do run my company pretty much since day one. Like what I speak on is delegation. And so I love that. Exactly what you're saying is what I live my life by, John. Now we need to buy beers because now it's becoming more of a personal relationship. I'm flying to DC. Let me get this plane.
I'm in New York, not DC.
John's in New York. Shane, I told you, get out here and we could all hang out.
I'm in Vegas. That's a long plane ride, especially with a 5-month-old. Give me 6 months and we'll do something. John, I have a question real quick. Sorry, Vin.
Go for it.
This podcast is really about people's perceptions and mindset about what they really believe of the 1%. So I'm generally curious, when you hear that, the 1%, what do you think?
Well, you guys asked me this earlier, and like I deal with some of the super wealthy people in the world, and I don't think of it as that as being the 1%. The word I wrote down is freedom. So I live my life based on the fact that I want to achieve freedom squared. So 1% would be freedom squared. To me is like you decide who you want to work with, when you want to work with them, how you want to work with them, what you get paid, and where you're located. And so it's squared because I've sort of achieved freedom in my life. But freedom squared is now I built my life. Like one of the things I really like about the negotiation work is I could do it from anywhere in the world, because I could do an hour Zoom from anywhere in the world and get paid very well for what we do and make huge outcomes. So I like that. I generally seek freedom. And the only downside of my EOS practice is that it requires me to be in a room for 8 hours with a group. I work out of the Bat Cave in New York. I always wanted to have a Bat Cave. Joe had a Bat Cave before me, and then I took it over. And so I have a pretty awesome Bat Cave in New York where people can work out of, like 1,000 square feet. That's just purpose built for hanging out for the day. But yeah, I seek freedom. So my 1% is, freedom.
I
I
agree.
love it.
I agree. I think that's why we all get into doing entrepreneurship to some degree, right? We want the freedom. We don't get into entrepreneurship to, honestly, even if it's not about even making a ton of money. We all get into entrepreneurship because we want some sort of life outside of what we're told we're able to do. And I think we're all looking to create a level of freedom, me included. Shane, obviously. I mean, Shane works 4 hours a week. He doesn't even work. I don't know why he's always busy. He's always busy, and yet he never works. Fascinating man. So I love the aspect of finding freedom. John, I'm curious. I want to rewind a little bit. You have such an interesting story, and I know that you're believing that life evolves as it should and that you show up and you take opportunities. I'm curious, if we step back into your childhood, and this is probably the therapist part of me, what did you imagine your life as a kid? Like when you were growing up, what was your hope and dream? What was the story you thought you would live out?
I always thought I was going to be an entrepreneur and work with my dad and my grandfather. So I
What were they
sat,
doing?
they were entrepreneurs. So like various different types of businesses.
Gotcha.
So I always thought I would do that, but my dad went bankrupt just as I got out of school in 92. I went and worked in corporate. So I was at JP Morgan. I had a great job there. One day I'm sitting downstairs at the turnstile watching people leave, and like no one's over 40. I'm like, what lie are they telling us here? Because I don't even want to be here. Everyone says like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm like, I don't want to be doing this. So I went and created my own luck, I guess.
I love that, man.
I want to take that little piece of what you said, that everybody's telling me this is what I'm supposed to be doing. They teach you this in school, they teach you this in college, they teach you to be a sheep. It takes an entrepreneur, a wolf, to go on his own, to go outside the norm, to create their own success, learn from their failures. This is the 1% in a whole society, is that mindset. I love that. And, hopefully your dad got out of that and learned it as a lesson, because obviously it can go two different ways. But I know a couple of people that have also been in terrible situations, including David Meltzer, who publicly speaks about this and completely 180'd his entire life and made it from the better. And I think failure is the ultimate teacher, especially when you're an entrepreneur.
John, I'm going to piggyback off that. What is one of your biggest failures that led to one of your best outcomes?
Yeah, we were, I was in Abu Dhabi working on this project, and we thought we had $100 million. We had $100 million contract, but the contract was indefinite delivery, indefinite quantities, meaning like they could turn it off at any time. So we built all the infrastructure there, got about $25 million into the project, and they decided to turn it off. Well, we hadn't paid for the fixed overhead to make this whole thing work. I had to pay my friends off who were invested in the business. I stayed for like 7 years to follow through on what my word was. And at some point I decided that I couldn't do that anymore, and I needed to, I did the best I could to get them paid out. And then so the story goes, I work for Sheikh Mohammed in Abu Dhabi. He's the ruler of the UAE. I work for his folks, but like he was ultimately, we had a picture with him. So you could use it like a PBA card, like a get out of jail free card. Here's Sheikh Mohammed. Here's me. Any questions? No questions, because no one has a picture with him. Or very few people do. I got home. I couldn't get a meeting with anybody. Like they didn't know who I was. I was working with the princes in Saudi Arabia. Come home. I said 240 coffees, no money. So I spent 9 months trying to figure it out. And today I am an expert EOS implementer, and I say I'm a world famous doctor that people fly into New York to see me and my team to help fix their business, and then I do these negotiations with all kinds of interesting folks. So,
man, John, you live such an interesting life. I don't have any more questions for you. I think you've shared so much that has really helped the listeners. Hopefully they've gotten some good pieces of information. Hopefully some of them want to use EOS. I don't know how big some of their businesses are, but maybe you got Shane right here. Shane's pretty curious. He's a curious cat. So,
well, I'm kind of bummed that this podcast is ending, because I want it to be a 24-hour thing. I can go buy 120 coffees right now and we could just go all day. I agree with the very interesting man, John. I'm glad that we got to meet. Yeah, and I appreciate your time. This podcast is very fun to do because we get to interview people like you.
Yeah. John, do you have any? Sometimes podcasts like to ask me this, so I've thought I would like to start asking.